Now, this didn't really happen to me, but it happened to a close friend of mine named Sean, and this took place sometime in 2020. It was sometime, I guess, around between late January and early February, and this was before the global pandemic had almost everything, pretty much everything on lockdown at the time. Now, Sean was about 25 years old at the time of this story, so he was still living with his parents in a pretty decent neighborhood. Of course, the crime rate wasn't really the best, but hey, it was definitely a decent town where some people like to do stuff like block parties and stuff like that. However, though, Sean was single at the time of this story as his previous girlfriend had unfortunately cheated on him with another guy 2 years back, and Sean had remained single for at least 2 years. As soon as he turned 25, sometime in January, he thought that he would decide to see if he could ask or maybe perhaps see if anyone would want to date him. But most of his friends that are girls were already dating someone, some were already married, off to college, etc. Bummed out, he decided to get a dating app called Tinder, and when he did, he ended up making a profile with a decent look and ended up messaging a couple girls, hoping that one of them would message back. After about a little bit, like at least a couple of days, Sean ends up getting a message, what seemed to be a woman who happened to be her name Maria. Maria seemed to be a pretty decent girl, and Sean really liked her. While she wasn't a really 10 out of 10, she still wasn't ugly, and Maria looked to be about at least a year younger than Sean, which was perfect, as he was looking for someone around his age, at least mid-20s or so. However, Maria started messaging him, and they started asking each other questions of what they're into and stuff. As the convo keeps going on for at least a couple of days, they finally decided that they would make out a date where they would meet each other in person. Now, at this time, though, Sean did own a car, and while he was still living with his parents, he asked Maria if she drives, to which she said yes, but her car was in the shop. As soon as she said that, she asked Sean if Sean could meet her at her house and pick her up. Now, Sean didn't mind this, so he said that he would be able to go and pick her up and take her out for a nice dinner. Now, it was a Friday night, and Sean ended up getting ready to go out when his phone dinged and said it was Maria saying that she will be at her house. She gave him the address, to which Sean found it a bit odd. At first, he didn't think of it, so he ended up going to his car, and he ended up driving all the way to Maria's house in the given address. Once he got there, though, no lights in the house were on, and it seemed like there was no car in the driveway. It didn't look run down, but it seemed to be a pretty odd house. It was even almost out to the country. Now, Sean ended up texting Maria saying that he was here, and what he did notice is one of the windows there was somewhat of a woman getting up and opening the door. It wasn't Maria like the photo described. It was actually an older woman, maybe in her mid-50s. That's when Sean ended up backing out of the driveway and about to get out. The woman all of a sudden started screaming and chasing him with a crowbar. Sean flew her down the road as fast as he could on his car, checking the rearview mirror to see if this woman was following him. He did go to the police station later on and report the incident, as well as the app of Tinder and the woman that he was dating, but unfortunately there was no follow-up since then, as there was nobody in the house when the cops went to go check. Now, this is the reason why Sean has never did online dating, but at least sometime when the pandemic restrictions got lifted back in the summer of 2020, he is now dating a young woman who happened to be 25, and her name is Jane. And this comes to show you that that woman was pretending to be Maria, obviously to probably lure Sean into her house and do God knows what. What could have happened to Sean if he had not got out of his car, and what would have happened to him if he stayed in that house or near that house any longer? So this actually happened to one of my friends back in 2019, and his name was Jaden. Now Jaden was about in his college years, probably 20 or 21, and he was a senior year in college at the time. Now Jaden didn't really had any plans on dating for a while, but however, he decided that he happened to be looking for someone that he really wanted to date, since he was single for all of his life. Now keep in mind that he is gay, so that means he was looking for some guys who were gay, bi, or even pansexual. Now Jaden was going through a couple of things in college when he all of a sudden decided that he would go and open up an app on Tinder. He opened the app and he found a few cute guys, and one of them stood out to him. He happened to be maybe in his same age, and his name was Jordan. Jordan messaged Jaden back and forth, and they talked about what they liked and about what stuff they had in common, and etc. The usual stuff. However, since Jaden didn't live too far from his apartment, or in this case, the house where his parents were, he was going to be back with his parents before the finals. Now, he was obviously going to be there for a week, so he ended up staying at his family's house at the time. So this was obviously before the finals were going on. However, though, as he was doing his own thing by studying for finals at his parents' house, he ended up getting a message from Jordan saying that he's at his house. There was a photo, what seemed to be described as his house. It honestly really freaked Jaden out, as how could Jordan even know where he lived? He didn't give him any information on where he lived or his parents lived. It honestly scared him as Jaden was hyperventilating. Jordan ended up sending him photos, a photo of his house and a couple photos of Jaden. Some were of him in college, going to other classes, and one disturbing the most was a picture of him sleeping in his own bedroom. Honestly, since this freaked out Jaden, he ended up telling his parents about it, and they ended up getting the cops involved. However, though, the account was taken down, and they had no idea how this Jordan person found out where Jaden lived. This honestly was still really shocking, as Jaden had never been so scared of his life. Of course, the college he was going to was informed about this suspicious person, and they have upped their security to when faculty members and students can enter the university. Parents may only enter if they have any reason, but other than that, the security became more stricter than ever after this incident. Jaden has never used online dating again, and he has never had any experience like this again since, and he hopes it stays that way. For a bit of backstory, this happened to one of my friends who happened to be Calvin, and this took place sometime when he was living in Belize at the time of the story. I believe this took place sometime in 2018 when he was living in Belize with his friend named Melissa. Melissa and Calvin had been dating in Belize for about a year and a half, but unfortunately, Melissa ended up dying from a car accident caused by a drunk driver. Calvin had been single for for 2 months, but as soon as he got over the passing of his girlfriend, he ended up deciding to sign up for a app and hope that he could find someone that really would suit him. He got an app called OkCupid and started swiping at a few women that he didn't like and hoped that one of them would contact him. It wasn't long until Calvin got a message from a woman who happened by the name of Nicole. Nicole seemed to maybe be a bit too old for him, but she was about at least 3 years older than Calvin, so he didn't mind it. Calvin was 25, and Nicole happened to be maybe 28 or 29, but she wasn't too ugly or perfect, but she was definitely a decent woman. Calvin began messaging Nicole, and they started talking back and forth, and they seemed to get along pretty well. However, though, the weirdest part is when Nicole typed was something with dots. Now, this honestly confused Calvin, so at first he asked her if something was wrong, since when he could tell someone's putting just dots after the end of the sentence or something, he kind of knew something was wrong, and he had this experience with multiple other men, as well as his friends. Of course, she said, "Oh, don't worry, I'm fine." But of course, this is when Calvin began questioning her more, and she ended up snapping at him, saying, "None of your business, okay?" Calvin was jumped aback by this, but thought that maybe Nicole was just having a bad day. So he ended up just letting it go and not even bother to do much. It wasn't until maybe sometime a week later when Nicole wanted to meet Calvin in person. They suggested they go to this one beautiful park in Belize, so that's when Calvin decided to go there. Now, when Calvin was at the park, he waited for Nicole, and he waited for a while, but he didn't see anyone. At this point, it was getting dark out, to which everyone had most likely gone to bed for the night. As Calvin waited, he ended up looking to see that there was a man. He seemed to be maybe in his 50s, and he seemed to be a little bit older. That was not Nicole, thought Calvin. As soon as he saw that, he ended up taking a run for it down to the park. Of course, this man ended up chasing him, and as soon as Calvin got to his house, he locked every door and window in this house, and he ended up staying in his room for the rest of the night. Too scared as to what almost could have potentially happened to him was something he had no idea. Nicole's OkCupid account was removed, and he had no idea who that man was. Still to this day, he had thoughts that it could have been this man who was pretending to be Nicole to lure him into something potentially happening to him. I'm just really glad Calvin was able to get away, because if he had stayed there any longer, chances are something bad could have potentially happened to him, and he wouldn't be here to this day. He moved out of Belize a year later, and he is now with a girl from America named Heather, and they are both doing excellent. And that was the only thing that Calvin needed. He had never used a dating site again, and doesn't ever plan to ever again, because shit like this can happen to anyone. Now, just to keep this story in mind, this isn't really the type of story to make you jump out of your seats or anything like that, but it's definitely one that was a little unsettling, but also a bit confusing as well. This took place, and it happened to me back in 2017. I was about 18 years old at the time of this story, and I got Tumblr back in 2016 in September, and that was when the Fallout community started getting big after the release of the fourth game that came out in 2015. Of course, I made an account, and I ended up picking some stuff that I like and didn't like, and etc. Now, when I was on Tumblr, I started adding some people that I liked and following some people, commenting on their stuff, reblogging, etc. However, though, it was sometime in January of 2017, I met someone from the Fallout community. Now, I won't say this dude's name for obvious reasons, as one, I can't honestly remember who he is, and two, I don't think he's even on Tumblr anymore. But this guy, I believe he was in New Jersey, and he happened to be at least 6 years older than me. I think he might have been 24 or something, but this guy seemed pretty nice. He messaged me saying, "Hi, how are you doing?" Now, I was single at the time of this story, so I ended up talking to him, and we started to talk about a lot more about Fallout communities and explaining, what our favorite companion is, who we like in Fallout, etc. However, though, I think it's sometime in late January and early February, this guy started to message me, and he and I were playing, joking around, doing some role-playing of Fallout, etc. As we were doing this, however, he started to ask me something really odd. I don't even know what it is, but first it started off with him flirting with me, saying stuff like, "Oh, you're sexy," etc. Now, this was honestly making me uncomfortable since I didn't even know really much who this guy really was. Like, not in person-wise, but you get the picture. He ended up asking me to send him some photos of my personal parts, which I told him no, and said that was not an option since I wasn't dating him or anything. He ended up just saying, "Oh, sorry," and then he just moved on from that. But then, meanwhile, he started to ask me if I wanted to be his girlfriend, and this was sometime before Valentine's Day. I accepted it, and I ended up dating him for a little while online, while messaging him and that. Of course, he did try to ask me for some parts of my body and pics, which I kept telling him no, and I told him that I was not comfortable with that. Now, in this case, most men with mature when they are reaching at least 25 and most, but they're slower to mature than women are. However, this guy ended up asking me to send him some pics of, X-rated images of cartoon characters. I obviously was starting to get uncomfortable, and I started not saying anything, afraid that if I said something, it may not end well. He ended up asking me if I was okay, and I had to come up with an excuse saying I'm not feeling good, or I'm tired, or at least something to get him to stop messaging me. Why didn't I not block him at the time? I don't even know. I didn't even know what was going on in my mind. However, though, I was still dating him at the time, but I was also dating someone else. Now, I don't really care. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, but at the time as well, I was only playing along with pretending to be this dude's girlfriend, as I didn't really know him personally. But eventually, he ended up messaging me more, I guess later on. When he asked me about it, I said to him I was taken by someone else. He ended up saying, "Well, are you poly?" I honestly didn't want to answer that since that was pretty personal. Plus, I wasn't even poly. I ended up telling him to leave me alone or I won't hesitate to block him, and he said, "Fine, bitch." As soon as he said that, I automatically blocked him. I have not heard from this dude since then, but I don't even know who he was. Now I don't know who this guy's name is either, but I don't think he's on Tumblr anymore. I don't even know if he deactivated his account or not, because when I went to go see if it was still up, it was not there and the account was taken down. I am just really glad that this dude did not try anything else to harm me, because if I didn't block him then, then who knows what could have happened. Most likely more harassment came up, but I also then heard from someone else that I'm associated with from Tumblr that they were harassed sexually by the same guy, asking her for photos of herself. And of course, I realize now that he was known for harassing women, and I happen to be a victim of it. However, I have never heard or talked to this dude since then, and since I can't remember his name or anything exactly, I'm just glad he has left me alone, and he has not talked to me since then, and I hope it stays that way.